so much for showing up today. This is truly so incredible, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of this and just see how Jesus is moving at Edina High School because this is insane. But my name is Poppy, and I'm a junior here at Edina High School and a leader at Garden Manhattan. And before I begin, I just want to take a moment to thank you guys so much for showing up. This is so incredible. Today I'm going to be talking about who Jesus is to me and how I've seen him at work in my life. So I grew up knowing about Jesus. I would go to church on Christmas and Easter and random Sundays, but faith wasn't something we really talked about at home. It wasn't too personal to me. But in 5th grade, I started going to a sleepaway camp in Pennsylvania, and that was the first time I really heard about the gospel and understood who Jesus really was. And those 2 weeks at camp were amazing. I went back for the next 2 years, and I built incredible friendships and felt so close to God. I felt a real sense of peace and belonging, and like I didn't have to prove anything to anyone. I just could be exactly who I was and be accepted for that. But every time I came back home, that feeling didn't last. The peace would fade, the confidence would fade, and I would go back into feeling unsure of myself again. It started to feel like Jesus really only existed at camp, where everything was fun and easy, but when things were imperfect and uncertain in my real life, I questioned where he was. Then, the summer before 8th grade, I moved from Virginia to Minnesota, and that's when life started to get harder. I've always been someone who loves being around people, and friendships meant everything to me, so walking into a brand new school for the first time was something I'd never really experienced before. I felt completely alone in a way that I just had never felt before. Over time, things got a little bit better. I started going to Wednesday nights at church, mostly just to meet people, and that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. But even though things started to look okay on the outside, something had shifted inside of me. Since moving to Minnesota, I had been struggling with anxiety in a way that I had never really before. And when freshman year came, everything intensified. I didn't have classes with many of my friends, and things I used to not really care about suddenly felt really overwhelming. I started placing my worth in my test scores and my grades, and I cared so much about what other people thought of me that I slowly lost who I really was. My anxiety started to control my life, keeping me from doing things that I once loved, like spending time with my friends, which only made me feel more isolated. And even though I was still going to church every Wednesday night, my faith felt empty, like I was going through the motions without actually experiencing who God was. And then there was one night where everything had built up at once. I remember lying in my bed, and suddenly my chest tightened. My heart started to race, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. My thoughts were spiraling faster than I could keep up with, jumping from one fear to another, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't calm myself down. I realized this is more than just anxiety and that I was having a panic attack, and I had never really felt this out of control. And in that moment, I realized how much I had been relying on myself to hold everything together, to manage my emotions, to be enough on my own, that I couldn't even steady my own thoughts. I felt completely hopeless, and for the first time, I had to face the reality that I wasn't as control of the situation like I thought I was. I had worked so hard to keep everything on the outside looking okay, when on the inside, the reality was that I was falling apart. That moment didn't just fix everything instantly, but it exposed something deeper in me. It showed me that I've been trying to find stability in things that constantly change, like my performance, people's opinions of me, and my circumstances, instead of something that's unchanging. Not long after that, I was at church, and during a series called Walk to the Cross, that night we talked about the unconditional love that Jesus has for us and how he chose to go to the cross knowing everything about us. And I remember sitting there thinking about everything that I had been carrying, my anxiety, my pressure to hold myself, the pressure I put on myself, and the constantly feeling that I wasn't enough. And for once, I wasn't trying to fix it or push it away. I was just sitting in it, and something clicked. For the first time, I realized that Jesus doesn't just know the best parts of me, he knows all of me. He knows the parts I try to hide, the parts I don't like about myself, and he still chooses to love me. Not a future, better version of me, and not a version that has everything put together, but he loves me, right where I am. And that wasn't just something that I understood in my head, but it felt real. It was like the weight that I'd been carrying for so long wasn't just mine to hold anymore. And I remember sitting there tearing up, not out of sadness, but because for the first time, I felt fully known and still fully loved. And I didn't have to do anything to earn it. And later that night, I went home, and at 9:05 p.m., like it still does every single day, I got a notification from the Bible app with the verse of the day, and normally I would just open it, glance at it, or swipe it away, but that night it felt different. So I clicked on it, and I opened it, and I still have it saved to this day, but it was Luke 15:20, which reads, "While he was still a long way off, his father saw him, and he was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. And as I read that, it began to feel personal. It felt like God was meeting me right where I was, in the middle of my doubts, in the middle of my struggles, and reminded me that I didn't have to have everything figured out to come to him. And even though I felt far from him, and I felt broken, he wasn't just standing at a distance waiting for me to fix myself, but he was running towards me. For the first time, I could actually picture that. Not a distant God, but a loving Father who sees me, who knows me, and still chooses me. And after that, my faith didn't become perfect overnight, but it became real. I started wanting more than just a surface level relationship with God. And that summer, I went back to a camp, and one night we were given a mirror, and we were told to look in it and write down things that we thought about ourselves that we wanted to lay at the feet of Jesus. And in that moment, I had realized how many lies I had been believing about myself. That I wasn't enough, that I wasn't truly loved, and that I hadn't earned my worth. And that became a turning point for me because I began to realize that I had been putting my worth and identity into my performance or what other people thought of me and not into who God said that I am. But when I came back home, my faith began to feel personal. I started to go to church on Sundays, even if that meant having to go alone, reading my Bible, reaching out to mentors, and for the first time, I was excited about my faith. Not just off of a camp high or not because of other people, but because I knew Jesus was real and that he was working in my everyday life. And since then, my life hasn't been perfect. I still struggle with anxiety, and I still have moments of fear and uncertainty. But the difference now is that I don't have to face those moments the same way that I used to. Instead of trying to control everything on my own, I've learned to trust that God has a plan for me even when I don't fully understand it. I can rely on him in those anxious moments, knowing that he is constant even when my feelings aren't. And I've also seen his goodness through the people that he's placed in my life. I'm surrounded by loving friendships and community that constantly point me back to him. And one verse that has meant a lot to me during this is Proverbs 3:5-6, which reads, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Because this reminds me that I don't have to have everything figured out because God already does. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is that no matter how far you feel or how broken you think you are, he's not running from you, he's running towards you. He loves you more than you could ever imagine. Before I end, I want to leave you with one more verse, Romans 38-39, which says, "Nothing in all of creation will be able to separate us from the love of Jesus Christ." Love of God in Jesus Christ. Thank you.